And every morning, before coffee, before breakfast, before you even stand up, your stomach has already been working for hours. But most of what it did overnight is invisible, a slow, sweeping wave that scrubs the lining and only becomes obvious when something interrupts it. And that's why today you're going to understand what actually happens when that first drink meets an empty stomach, and why the temperature, the contents, and the timing matter more than the wellness world has led you to believe. If you have ever swallowed a glass of water in the morning and felt nothing, or felt something subtle you could not quite name, that sensation is real. It is not a placebo. The stomach is doing something specific, and the small intestine downstream is responding. In the next 20 minutes, I want to walk you through three mechanisms that almost no one explains well: the cleaning wave that runs through your gut between meals, the protective layer that keeps your stomach from digesting itself, and the morning reflex that decides whether your day starts with comfortable digestion or a feeling of heaviness. Along the way, I will separate what is well established from what is folklore, and I will give you a simple protocol you can test tomorrow morning. I am not selling a product. I'm not asking you to drink a magic elixir. I am going to explain in plain language the biology of an event that has probably happened to you 10,000 times without you knowing it. The first thing to understand is that the stomach is not empty in the way an empty bucket is empty. Even when you have not eaten for 10 or 12 hours, the lining is active. Cells at the surface are continuously producing a thick, slippery layer of mucus. Beneath that mucus, specialized cells are pumping out hydrochloric acid. Other cells are releasing bicarbonate, which neutralizes the acid right at the surface of the lining. And the muscles of the stomach wall are running a slow, rhythmic cycle that, in the absence of food, becomes something very specific, a cleaning wave that sweeps from the top of the stomach down through the small intestine. That cleaning wave has a name. It is called the Migrating Motor Complex, often shortened to MMC. It was first described in detail in the 1960s and 1970s by researchers studying what the gut does between meals. They found that about every 90 to 120 minutes during a fast, a strong, coordinated contraction begins in the lower part of the stomach and travels downward, through the pylorus, into the duodenum, and onward, gradually weakening as it moves. Its job is to sweep residual food particles, dead cells, and bacteria down toward the colon. When the stomach is doing this, you do not feel much. There is no pain, no obvious motion. But researchers have observed that in some people, especially when the stomach is empty for a long time, this wave produces a faint gurgling sound. That sound is the sound of the MMC doing its work. Most people assume their stomach is growling because it's hungry. That is partially true, but the more precise explanation is that the stomach is running a self-cleaning cycle, and hunger is one of the signals that triggers it. The hormone involved is called motilin, released by cells in the upper small intestine during fasting, and its rise sets off each new wave. Now, what most people do at this point in the morning is reach for coffee. That is the cultural default. You wake up, walk to the kitchen, and the first liquid that enters the stomach is a dark, hot, slightly acidic brew containing caffeine. For many adults over 40, this habit has been in place for decades. The problem is not coffee itself. The problem is the combination: a strong stimulant, a relatively acidic beverage, and a stomach that has just spent the night producing acid and running cleaning waves without interruption. When that coffee arrives, several things happen at once. The caffeine stimulates additional acid secretion. The compounds in coffee can relax the lower esophageal sphincter in some people. And the liquid itself abruptly changes the rhythm of the MMC, because any significant intake of food or liquid will reset the cycle. For someone with a healthy stomach lining and no reflux issues, this is often uneventful. But for a growing number of adults over 40, the daily pattern is starting to show. A faint burning in the upper abdomen, a sense of fullness that has nothing to do with food, bowel movements that are unpredictable, sometimes too frequent, sometimes absent for 2 days. These are not dramatic symptoms. They are the kind of thing people adjust their lives around without naming. The cultural answer has been to add things to the morning drink: lemon, apple cider vinegar, a pinch of salt, a teaspoon of honey. Each of these comes with a story about how it alkalizes the body or kickstarts metabolism. Most of those stories are not supported by the underlying biology, but the underlying question, does what you drink first matter, is a real one, and it deserves a real answer. The first mechanism to understand is the one I have already introduced, the migrating motor complex. Once you know it exists, the morning becomes easier to interpret. The MMC is driven by the hormone motilin, which is released by specialized cells in the lining of the upper small intestine during fasting. Motilin rises in cycles, and each rise triggers a wave of strong contractions that begins about 90 minutes after your stomach finishes processing its last meal. If you ate dinner at 7 and finished by 8, the first real cleaning wave of the night might begin around 9:30 or 10, the next one around midnight, the next around 1:30. By the time you wake up, you are typically in the middle of one of these cycles. Now here is the part that matters for the title of this video. When you drink water on an empty stomach, the water does not stop the cleaning wave the way food does. A glass of water passes through the stomach relatively quickly, typically within 10 to 20 minutes, and it does not trigger the full release of digestive enzymes that a meal does. So the MMC continues. In fact, several studies in fasting subjects have observed that drinking water increases the frequency of contractions in the upper part of the stomach and slightly accelerates gastric emptying. The stomach distends gently. Mechanoreceptors in the wall sense the volume, and the cleaning wave, already in progress, picks up the water and uses it as part of its sweep. Think of it this way: a cleaning wave on a dry surface is less effective than a cleaning wave that has fluid to carry debris. Water, in this sense, is not a treatment, it is a working fluid for a system that is already running. This is one of the most well-established mechanisms in gastroenterology, and it is the foundation of the advice to drink water in the morning. It is not because water has magical properties, it is because the gut is already doing something specific, and water supports that something. So here is the first practical takeaway before we go further. If you want to support the cleaning cycle that has been running overnight, drink a glass of water within the first 30 minutes of waking. Plain water, room temperature or slightly warm, on an otherwise empty stomach. Not because the water does anything mystical, because the cleaning wave is already in motion and water helps it do its job. The second mechanism is about protection. Your stomach is a remarkable organ in part because it contains a substance strong enough to dissolve metal, hydrochloric acid, and yet it does not dissolve itself. The reason is a layer of mucus about 0.5 millimeter thick that coats the inside of the stomach wall. This mucus is not just a passive slime, it's a structured barrier organized in 2 layers with a denser outer portion and a thinner inner portion. Cells at the surface of the stomach lining secrete bicarbonate ions into this layer, and the bicarbonate neutralizes acid that diffuses in from the lumen. The result is a pH gradient. In the center of the stomach, where the acid sits, the pH can be as low as 1 or 2, strong enough to break down proteins. But right at the surface of the cell, the pH is close to neutral, around 6 or 7. The mucus is the buffer that makes that possible. The stomach's acid production also follows circadian rhythm. Acid secretion tends to peak in the late evening and during the early morning hours, modulated by the same clock signals that govern cortisol. This is one of the reasons that peptic ulcer symptoms often flare at night or in the early morning. The lining is being challenged while protective mechanisms are at their thinnest. Now, what happens to this protective layer overnight? It is continuously produced and continuously eroded by mechanical action and by the acid it is designed to contain. By morning, after 10 or 12 hours of fasting, the layer is being replenished, but it is also thinner and more vulnerable than it will be after breakfast, when food stimulates a fresh wave of protective secretion. This is where the temperature of the morning drink becomes relevant, and where some of the popular advice is actually defensible. Very cold water, close to ice temperature, can cause a brief contraction of the blood vessels in the stomach lining. In most healthy adults, this is harmless and quickly reversed, but in someone with existing gastritis, with regular NSAID use, or with chronic reflux, very cold liquids on an empty stomach can produce a transient discomfort that is real even if the long-term effect is small. Warm water, by contrast, around body temperature or a bit above, does not trigger that vascular response. The stomach wall remains relaxed, the mucus layer is not stressed by a sudden temperature change, and the cleaning wave continues without interruption. This is one of the reasons traditional systems, Ayurvedic, traditional Chinese medicine, even the simple habit of warm lemon water in the morning recommend warm rather than cold liquid first thing. The advice was correct in its effect, even when the explanation was often wrong. Let me make this concrete with 2 mornings. Person A wakes up at 6:30, stumbles to the kitchen, pours a tall glass of cold water from the fridge, drinks it quickly, then makes a strong coffee and drinks that on an empty stomach, holding off breakfast until 8. By 9, they notice a faint tightness in the upper abdomen. By mid-morning, they feel vaguely bloated. They assume this is normal. They have a second coffee to get going. Person B wakes up at the same time, pours a glass of room temperature water, drinks it slowly while standing at the sink, waits about 20 minutes, then makes a milder coffee and has it with a small piece of food, a few almonds, half a banana, a piece of toast. By 9, they feel alert and their stomach feels neutral. By mid-morning, they have a comfortable bowel movement. The difference between these 2 mornings is not dramatic, but the difference in the stomach is real. Person A's stomach received cold liquid, then a strong acid stimulant, then nothing for 90 minutes while a cleaning wave was attempting to run. Person B's stomach received neutral temperature liquid, allowed the cleaning wave to complete, then received a buffered stimulant along with food, which triggered a fresh round of protective mucus secretion before the major acid load. Neither person is doing anything catastrophic, but over years, the small daily pattern compounds. This is how habits that feel harmless in the moment can quietly shape how digestion feels by the time someone is 50 or 60. The third mechanism is the one most people have felt but few can name. It is called the gastrocolic reflex. The gastrocolic reflex is a signal that travels from the stomach to the colon when the stomach is distended by food or liquid. Its job is to make room. When the upper gut senses that something is about to arrive, it sends a message to the colon to start contracting, so that what is already in the colon can be moved down and out. This is why many people feel the urge to have a bowel movement shortly after eating, and especially after the first meal or drink of the day. In the morning, the gastrocolic reflex is amplified by 2 things. First, the colon has been relatively inactive overnight. Second, the MMC has been sweeping material into the colon throughout the night, so there is content ready to be moved. A glass of water in the morning can be enough to trigger the reflex in some people. For others, it takes a larger volume or a meal. Here is the practical consequence. If you skip hydration in the morning and rush straight to a large, stimulating coffee, you may overwhelm the reflex. The colon receives a strong signal, contracts, but has limited material to work with, and the result can be a sense of urgency or cramping that does not produce a satisfying result. Alternatively, you may feel nothing at all, and the morning's waste sits in the colon for several more hours. A glass of water, taken slowly on an empty stomach, gives the reflex a gentler input. It says to the colon, "Something is coming, begin." Without the strong stimulant of caffeine on an empty tissue, the response is more orderly, and the result, for many people, is a more predictable morning. This is also why hydration status throughout the previous day matters. Hard, dry stool in the morning is not only a function of what you did in the morning, it is a function of the previous 72 hours of fluid intake. The morning glass of water helps, but it cannot fully compensate for chronic mild dehydration, low fiber intake, or a sedentary routine. Now, let me calibrate what I have said against the evidence.
The migrating motor complex is well established. It has been studied in humans since the late 1960s, and its role in gut housekeeping is not in dispute. The relationship between water intake and motility is more modest but real. Studies in fasting subjects have shown that drinking water increases the frequency of antral contractions and accelerates gastric emptying. The effect is small but consistent. The protective mucus layer and the pH gradient are textbook physiology. The circadian rhythm of acid secretion is supported by clinical observation and older physiological studies. The specific claim that warm water is better than cold water is supported by indirect evidence, vascular response, subjective comfort, traditional practice, but there is no large clinical trial showing that warm water produces measurably better digestive outcomes in healthy adults. The temperature choice is reasonable, not strongly proven. The gastrocolic reflex is well established as a physiological phenomenon. Its role in morning bowel habits is supported by clinical observation. The idea that a glass of water in the morning can support this reflex is plausible and is consistent with what is known. But again, large randomized trials specifically on morning water intake and bowel outcomes are limited.
The claims I have not made are important. I have not said that warm water with lemon detoxifies the body. The liver and kidneys do that. I have not said that morning water boosts metabolism by a specific percentage. The thermic effect of water is real, but small and short-lived, on the order of tens of calories over an hour. I have not said that any of this prevents serious disease. I have said that the stomach is doing specific things in the morning, that water interacts with those things in measurable ways, and that the small choices you make in the first hour of the day have downstream consequences for how digestion feels. So, here is the protocol, kept deliberately simple. First, when you wake up, drink a glass of water, around 200 to 300 milliliters, room temperature or warm, around 35 to 40 degrees Celsius if you want to be precise. Do this before coffee, before breakfast, before anything else. Second, wait about 15 to 20 minutes. Use this time to do whatever your morning requires. Wash your face, step outside, look at the day. The waiting period is not magical. It is the time the stomach needs for the water to pass through and for the cleaning wave to continue uninterrupted. Third, if you want coffee, have it after this short wait, ideally with a small amount of food, a few nuts, half a piece of fruit, a piece of toast. Not because coffee is bad, but because the combination of strong coffee and a fully empty stomach is the part that produces discomfort in a meaningful number of adults. Fourth, if you've been told to add lemon or apple cider vinegar to your morning water, understand what you are actually doing. Lemon juice mildly acidifies the water. In a healthy stomach, this is harmless and may even feel pleasant. In someone with active gastritis or reflux, it can be irritating. Apple cider vinegar is more acidic and less well tolerated on an empty stomach. There is no strong evidence that either of these additions produces a metabolic benefit that plain water does not. Fifth, if you have a specific digestive condition, gastroparesis, IBS, IBD, chronic reflux, recent abdominal surgery, this general protocol may not apply to you in the same way. Talk to the clinician who knows your case. The biology I have described is real, but the right application depends on the body it is being applied to. The next time you stand in your kitchen in the early morning, with a glass in your hand and the day not yet started, you will be doing something that most people do without thinking, but your stomach is not thinking less. It has been running a cleaning wave through the night. It has been producing acid and replacing mucus. It is, in a very real sense, prepared for what is about to happen. The water you're about to drink is not a miracle and not a medicine. It is a working fluid for a system that is already in motion. It supports the cleaning wave. It eases the morning reflex. It gives the stomach something to do before the harder work of digestion begins. Tomorrow morning, try this once, not as a new identity, not as a 30-day challenge, once. Notice what the first sip feels like. Notice whether the next 20 minutes feel different than usual. You will not have transformed your health by the end of breakfast, but you will have done something that 10,000 mornings of doing it unconsciously never quite managed. You will have understood the stomach you live in.